So I'm appreciative. I think, well, I just know this is a better ordinance than what we have now. I can be crazy not to go ahead and do it just because there's a few little things that are left undone, or because maybe we haven't dotted every I and crossed every T. Maybe we just save some of that stuff for the future. See if it's going to be a problem. So anyway, I think overall this is going to be a good thing. We're gonna preserve the trees that we have. We're going to preserve the views that we all want to have by maintaining as much of the canopy as is reasonable to do. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Maureen, you're pushing it.
I think, I like to talk. There's an assumption operating here that I'm questioning.
B.
Trees are not an endangered species in Sky Valley. And I've been here long enough to see, I have done some cutting of trees, even though I had a lot of opposition from the people in power. I finally got I had my permits and I still got grief. I hope that is over with, because if it's not, you're going to hear from me. But I think that in making decisions, that assumption has operated in favor of opposing people. The issue that you still have is if somebody wants to top trees, the assumption is that's a bad thing. Our neighbors have given us permission to top trees, to open up the view. And I've done that, and I'll tell you right now, they're all growing back again. And the assumption that these old trees are advantageous, when I took my trees down, and they were big, and they'd been there a very long time, you know what? They were hollow inside because the rodents had gotten in. And just about all those big trees had the potential to fall down. And I live on the windy side of the mountain. And it's a good thing we took them down, because they were, and this last spring, I had a tree fall down, and I spent $350 getting somebody to cut it up and remove it. And I really didn't have to, except it looked nasty just laying there. And when I took out my trees, if you go and look, I spent $3,500. I spent $7,500 getting them taken down and removed. And then I spent $3,500 replanting blooming things and things that would hold the soil. But your issue isn't us. Your issue is going to be developers and people who build spec houses. That's who comes in and clear cuts. I'll sit down.
One last time.
One last thing I want to say. Everything you have said, you personally have said, since I've been coming to these meetings, I totally agree with.
Thank you.
I totally agree with. And you've said it time and time again. My concern is that's not the way it's going to be implemented. So let me just make one last proposal. Maybe instead of going to either the manager or the council, maybe we form a committee of the board, or the council forms a committee, and it goes to the committee.
I have no problem with forming a committee if you could ever find enough volunteers to serve on it.
I will help you as volunteer.
No.
Because I think, but I think
I have too many jobs now.
I think your description of everything throughout all this, I think makes everybody comfortable.
Thank you.
Because you've said time and again, this is not going to prohibit you from doing, basically, I'll put one word in there in your mouth. This is not going to prohibit you from doing anything that's reasonable.
Correct.
And now, let me ask one more thing, if you would. After the last meeting, when you said that about 10 times, I asked for a copy of your statements. And there was no copy, there was no recording, there was no, So if you would direct that comments in this meeting made by everybody must be kept, must be retained.
Being recorded.
Well, when I asked last time,
There was no
Well,
recording.
There was
last.
no recording at that meeting that you're talking about. That
Okay.
started at the
well,
last.
if you could,
But yes, it is now.
if you could direct that the recording be made available to the public.
It'll be on the
It is,
website.
it goes on the website.
Okay.
Then we have to decide
Okay.
on keeping.
Ed Style, all the way in the back.
Ed Style, Ridgeway, member of the council. I think we all have to do our due diligence with this, and as a member of the county council, or city council, I have done due diligence. You have to read the old ordinance, and you have to read the new ordinance. And I commend this committee for injecting into the old ordinance by this change, the ability for those of us who are property owners and homeowners to make an impactful voice in this whole process. One of the frustrations of the first ordinance, the original, the one we're living with, is that all decisions are made by city inspector and city manager. Now, the city property owner has an equal and maybe even more powerful voice by being able to take out trees that they see as injurious or dangerous to their homes and cleaning up their properties as they see fit. And then for those that are the quote historic trees or important trees, then we ask for a permit to be done. But the others don't need permits anymore. That's a big change, folks. And we need to appreciate that as property owners and city owners as we move forward. It's an ongoing process. It's not all going to be perfect at the end of this month, but it's an ongoing process as we make things better for all of us here in Sky Valley.
All right, has everybody had ample opportunity to voice an opinion? Yes, sir.
My name is Steve Powell. I reside in Orlando, Florida. I have a home on West Sugarbush. Been associated with the area, I don't know whether it's 9 or 10 years, and I've only owned up here for about 5. One of the things that is, by the way, aren't there other seasonal residents here? Wasn't there a gentleman here? And I just wanted to speak in behalf, I have agreed with some of the things you said and some that I haven't agreed with, but I do wish I had a pair of socks like that. Those are cool socks. The other thing I've agreed with is I've agreed with what you've said. I've agreed with what you've said, I've agreed with what you've said, and curiously, I've agreed with what you've said because there's been parts of it that I truly feel are real. The thing that bothers the crap out of me is that I am a seasonal owner with no voice. Man, I got march to the tune you guys play. I can't vote on anything. That's because I just don't happen to live here, and that's the rules. But what I've really gotten bothered by was the what I call the Hatfields and the McCoys. I'm bothered by the haves and the have-nots. I'm a have-not. I'm bothered by the fact that some of the haves get things done that none of us otherwise would get done. There's a house at the end of my street that has the most incredible view going, and I don't know how he got that. And if you know where I live and you know where he lives, you know who I'm talking about. What I'm concerned about is this torn neighborhood over a P&Z issue. What I'm concerned about is handing something thick to a prospective buyer and says, this is what you're buying and this is what you're buying into. What Neil said a minute ago and what I'm seeing on these 12 pages can both be correct if we reformat what is here to a couple of straight up pages this is what you want to read more about your particular issue, go to page 7 in an index, or go to the particular footnote. You can get all of that done, but one of the things that intimidates people is the amount of information that you have to ferret through to get to something that you understand. I've been a professional salesman for 25 years. I own a business in Florida, and I can't tell you how many key people I've handed something thick to that have thrown it back at me and just tell me what it says. I don't have time, or I don't have the initiative to read this. Just tell me what it says. If you can reformat this into a couple of pages where it's clean and clear, and the backup is always there, then I think people will read and understand. It's like, I believe, the comment that Neil made, that he had to sit down with Steve and go through this again until he understood it. Some of us haven't read it all, some of us haven't. I just feel like this shouldn't be such a divisive issue. I own a home. I have trees in my backyard. I have to tell you, my wife and I are having a discussion about it in our own house. I want to cut some, she doesn't. We're not going to cut them. So, but I should have the understanding in a simple form. I'm a peon because I don't vote, I can't vote. I love the neighborhood. I moved here, I bought here because I love the neighborhood. I just am disenchanted by the Hatfields and the McCoys and the haves and the have-nots. And you know what's curious about we have-nots? We pay the same taxes you do. We support the same roads that you have. And we are part of the community, paying for the same things that you are, but I have no voice. This is the first voice I've had. I watched your meetings online. I've talked to neighbors. I'm very involved as much as I can be. My family drove 10 hours yesterday so I could be here today, simply because I wanted to see who was for, who was against, and what they were saying. I think we can simplify this, pardon the old phrase, get on the same page and work together a little more closely. Thanks.
Sir, you are not a pain.
Oh, I am a people.
No, you're not. I have felt like my entire life, I never fit in.
Oh, no.
No,
I
I
feel
know,
it
I
quite
know.
well.
No, I
Your
don't.
psychology is not helping me.
No, I'm not trying to be with you.
Thank you. I have a mother. Thank you.
I
Thank you.
am, I just want you to know, I feel like I'm a peon too, okay? I don't have all the money in the world either, like some people.
Do you live here?
You're real.
Okay, I don't. So we have a difference already.
Yeah.
But Steve, I think one of the points that should be made here is, I don't know how many homeowners there are here, but our councilman, every one of them, needs to support the whole community. This community depends on everybody, including yourself.
That's why you're not the
And
peon.
the way to do that is when you are up here, if you can get involved in some of these committees, so you do have a voice.
Well, if I may add to that, that's a good point. I said the other day to someone whose opinion I respect, it's too bad that the council is not made up of a resident, a non-resident landowner, and very possibly a member of the country club, because I think there's some different points of view there. The problem with that is that the non-resident can't be here for every one of the meetings that the others would like to have. But if you could be better represented through your representatives, then I think you would have less of a have and have not opinion in the neighborhood.
May I speak to that? I was a past chairman of the Property Owners Association. In those days,
Stand up, Maureen.
I'm sorry, I'm running my mouth again. I was a chairman of the POA, and I followed other people. The POA at that point was advocacy. That's where we had a voice in what was happening. And our main position was to represent everybody. But we were much more involved in I have sat in meetings for years, but that was the role of POA. We took up the advocacy issues for people who were residents and people who were not, and we were much more active in advocacy. And that has changed, which is whoever's in charge now. I think he does a good job. But that was the total focus of POA, in addition to giving some great parties, which we did. But anyway, FYI, that's what we served, how we served.
All right, we're digressing here, so let's try to get back on topic. Does anybody else still need to speak?
No.
Okay. We have a couple of options here. We've had it suggested that the shrubbery portion of the ordinance needs to be addressed. I will just state what it does say currently. And under protected native shrubbery and specimen trees, the removal of native shrubbery and specimen trees may be permitted on a limited basis as follows. The criteria being the overall condition of the tree or plant. If it's hollow, get rid of it. How the removal will impact erosion in the area. That's a big concern if clear cutting happens. How removal will impact water runoff. The density of the native plants or specimen trees on the lot. Thinning would be permitted. Contribution of the native shrubbery or specimen tree to the natural beauty of the area. The necessity or lack thereof to remove the native shrubbery or specimen trees to allow reasonable economic use of the property. The impact of that native shrubbery or specimen trees on the right-of-way. The buffer left between your property and the adjoining property. And reasonable wildfire protection of structures under Sky Valley's fire-wise laws. So those things are addressed. Does that meet your need?
No, because you got 100% mitigation rule. It doesn't matter if it's too dense and you got a fire problem and you take it out and you put one back, you have accomplished nothing. For reasonable thinning of shrubbery, I'm surrounded by vacant lots that could easily catch on fire and burn up my house. And, and I probably can't get these guys to thin their rhododendron and mountain laurel to protect my house anyway, but at least I could ask. But if I go to them and say, hey, I'm endangered here, and they're gonna have to mitigate it, they're definitely saying no. I mean, even if I had somebody with a house next door that's managing their property, and they have to mitigate it when they take it out, I just think to have a 25% mitigation rule on trees and a 100% mitigation rule on shrubbery, which happens to be the biggest problem just as she said, it's this oily mountain laurel and rhododendron that is the fire problem for us.
Sandy, under E, it does say approval of a permit for minimum selective cutting or removal of native shrubbery or specimen trees will require mitigation unless it falls within the thinning density guidelines. So if it falls under the thinning, there's
The
no.
thinning density guidelines deal with trees. Love.
No, it says right there, either
But
or.
this throws this into that category as well.
Then put it, but when you get into, I agree with them. And now we're getting down to, we have something that talks about thinning, and then, oh, by the way, over here, we threw something back in it. In the thinning density, talk about the thinning of shrubbery. So there's no question when it goes to the city manager, or gets appealed to the council, or gets all the way back to a Judge Sewell, don't have, oh, by the way, the thinning on the shrubbery is taken care of somewhere other than the thinning section.
We can add where it says including specimen trees, we can including specimen trees and native shrubbery.
Yeah,
I mean, that's not a
that's
problem.
what I would suggest.
That would do it. That would do it. I have a lot more trouble with having an enforceable, consistent ordinance than I do with what we take out or what we leave. I guess, you know, my background is in a highly regulated environment, and I don't want the chief coming over, and when a government has the power of arrest, I don't want to get arrested because I trimmed a shrub because it was included somewhere else in the ordinance.
You do it at night.
That's helpful.
What was your address
All right,
again?
did that address the issue under section 7, item number 1? Thinning trees is a removal of certain trees, including specimen trees or native shrubbery, from a standard regulated number of 12. Did that address it?
If you still got a 100% mitigation rule, I don't think you do.
Well, that says you don't have to
Under
mitigate.
thinning, you're not mitigating.
Okay, where was it?
Section 7, item number 1, paragraph number 1.
Which is tree removal.
Tree removal, thinning of density.
Make it tree and shrubbery thinning of density.
Well, I mean, shrubbery's in a different paragraph, and it also says it there, but if y'all want to include it back in the thinning, we can reference it there too, just so there's no question. But shrubbery has its own section.
So what you're saying, 7.3, no mitigation is required for thinning.
Right,
And I agree with that if it says shrubbery here.
yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Hallelujah, we accomplished something here.
So, but now, are we down to the shrubbery spacing here? Because when you get in this section, it's talking about how far you are from this big tree. So if you put shrubbery in there, it lets you take out 100% of it. Because it's not meeting those diameters in space 5, in item 5.
Well, that's probably why it was only in the shrubbery or section to begin with, but.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure
I
out what this.
mean, frankly, I can live with it if we went to like a 25% mitigation rule on shrubbery. I'm against clear cutting. I don't think it's healthy. But I think we need to be able to, I love what you have done a fabulous job with thinning on trees and reducing density on trees where it needs to be reduced. But we have cranked it up even higher on shrubbery.
Okay.
I mean, we have gone to where you cannot, if we try to put it here, you're gonna allow 100% of shrubbery to go. You know, which I would vote for that over 100% mitigation where it is today. I just think we need to get back to, my recommendation would be a reasonable density of shrubbery. We kind of took a shot at that with the existing ordinance, which the way I interpret the existing ordinance has got to be at least one shrub in a 10 by 10 area, right? Isn't that kind of what we're saying, Linda?
Yeah.
And I think that's probably an appropriate density. But if we go out there on an existing lot today and there are 5 in a 10 by 10 area, I can't take out 4 of them without putting 4 back. And we've accomplished nothing by doing that.
Feel free to chime in here, you two.
Do you feel like the Lone Ranger?
I mean, why is the shrubbery so much more important than the trees? Because that's what we've done with a 100% mitigation rule on shrubbery and a 25% mitigation rule on trees. We're all saying it's 400% greater for shrubbery than it is for trees, when the contentious thing has to be with the view and the, taking down the trees. Is somebody smoking these trees, these shrubs, or are they something active? they're just.
I think what we're trying to prevent is when it happens, it's when they clear cut it, basically.
Leave
Yeah.
one every 10 feet, leave one every 5 feet. Come up with some reasonable, what we're not addressing in here is a reasonable density of shrubs. And Debbie, she came to my house campaigning the other day, and I jumped on her, I'm sorry, but she saw next door to my lot, it's a fire hazard. There's no bear, possum, or anything that can, so it's not a wildlife habitat, it's a fire hazard, that's all it is. It's ugly, because it's fallen over on the ground. It doesn't, I don't think it doesn't promote erosion control as much as thinning it and having a reasonable density back there. Because most of it doesn't even, it's got a few leaves on where it fell over 30 feet from the stump.
So if we change it to 25%, you can,
I just think a reasonable density of shrubbery. You know, I think it would be better to have kind of what we got today, at least one significant shrub every 10 square feet, and that's not much bigger than that table. I think that's a reasonable density. And if it can be reduced in height to a reasonable density. I mean, Debbie Solomon, my neighbor has 30-foot tall rhododendrons that have fallen over and they're on the ground. You know, some of their roots are out of the ground. But if that was on my lot, I couldn't, under this ordinance, I couldn't do anything with it other than.
So what about instead of referring it back to the other one, if we just say, don't put it in the other one, because that confuses that. That require mitigation unless there is 1 per 10 square.
I think 1 per 10 square feet is abundance. I mean, it's certainly going to stop
Paragraph B
solar.
now, or?
In 90,
Yeah. I mean, the way you got this ordinance written today.
But 9F goes to AB. F is where the 100%, or B is where the 100% mitigation.
See, I don't think you should have mitigation on shrubbery unless you clear cut the shrubbery. I mean, if you could leave it at a reasonable density, you know, there shouldn't have to be any mitigation. And that cuts down on the homeowner's cost, it cuts down on the city's work to come out there and see if, you know, I don't even know how you're gonna enforce that today unless somebody comes and looks at the size of the pots you've got to do it.
we've got to define reasonable though. I don't want to leave reasonable in there.
And I don't like reasonable at all. I mean, that's what I'm saying, is a reason. I think 1 every 10 square feet, or, I'm sorry, 100 square feet, 10 by 10 block is a reasonable density.
No, I don't disagree.
But you're talking about removal as opposed to, you can still go in and trim.
You can trim, yeah, well, the thinning is good.
but that's your neighbor's property.
Well, but
That's
that's what I'm
what.
That's a whole
But it-
different
but
issue.
it-
Don't even
it
open
could
that
have
one up.
been- It could have been my property. That's why I'm, you know, I would love to see a house get built next door to me. But if a homeowner picks this up and says, my God, I'm gonna have $50,000 worth of mitigation to get a house on this property, there's not a house getting built there.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't mitigate for a house anyway.
No, you clear the footprint of the house, if you recall. Required mitigation for native shrubbery shall be required if the density
I would love that.
is less
If
than 10 square feet or
If
something.
you get down to less than one native shrub per 100 square feet or 10 by 10 block, you're gonna have to mitigate up to that level. You know?
That makes sense.
I'm not thinking clearly how to
Yeah.
word that right off the top of my head, but that would address that issue.
Dawn, I have to compliment you for properly saying rhododendron, ends with an N.
Our English teacher at work.
Did I properly say it or not properly?
Properly said.
Okay.
All right, now as for the size of this ordinance, I don't see how you could pare it down any and still address the same issues. And Neil, to your point of just having 1 or 2 pages and then have attachments, with the attachments, you haven't pared it down at all. So, I don't know that that would achieve anything. Go ahead.
I didn't have, I asked that you consider making it more user-friendly by making it a 1 or 2 page thing. When they pick it up, put the warehouses and the definitions in the back, doesn't change anything about enforcement. Send the person, the homeowner, to who he needs to talk to get the job done right at the front. And that should be what you're calling the code enforcer or the inspector. And I also think you should make that a more friendly term, monitor or something.
I think we're dealing
And
with what
that
is actual
person,
official
if that
title.
person is not the right person, then you need to replace that person with a person that the homeowner can go to.
Well, our
Shouldn't be
job here
somebody
is
that
not
have to be
to
second
hire
guessed.
and fire city employees.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about education, is all it is.
I understand, but.
It's education.
That falls on.
And friendliness and having a city be a service. The city performs services. They go out and collect your garbage, they provide your water. You know, it's a service. That's what we pay for, services. That's your taxes. So let's make this more serviceable and more friendly. And that's been my whole message the whole time.
Okay.
Thank you.
So,
You know,
And I think I could help with that.
talking about number of pages and words and all that, I think it's very important what you've done, which is all the definitions, all the whereas clauses, and making it more and more objective rather than leaving it subjective.
That is
Yes,
our
I
goal
agree.
all along.
And you can accomplish that.
All along.
Well, also, from the beginning, I had told Linda that once this document is finalized, that I would like to have a table of contents so that you can see at the very first page what page all these things are on. And I think if we had, my suggestion would be to have a table of contents, begin with the intent, the things that are on the second page, the intent, the purpose, and those things are an introduction to what the document is. And then you put down all of the different, the prunings and the tree removals, all of those definitions of, I mean, not definitions, but explanations of what the points, and then put the whereases, and then put the definitions, and have it in that format, that it would be more user-friendly. It wouldn't seem so intimidating. And I feel like we could do that.
I would like that too. I think it's an excellent idea.
Good compromise.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, but we are dealing with an ordinance, and Sky Valley has many ordinances, a lot of ordinances. I mean, it's in every place I've ever lived before, we had a strong POA that you had property owners' rules, and the city kind of got down to safety and soundness and things like, I mean, here we have the city telling me what color my roof can be, that I've dealt with one of them. That's not, I want to live in a community where they tell me what color my roof can be, but I think it should be the property owners association telling me that, than the city government, who can send him out to arrest me if my roof changes color. But back to that.
Last thing this group wants to do with this color map.
What I want to emphasize, it's very important that the city, all the city ordinances look the same. Please don't have a tree ordinance with definitions at the back and an erosion ordinance with definitions at the front or something. Try to regulation, enforcement, and understanding is this is not the only ordinance we have. So let's, and maybe we need to look at all our ordinances, you know, but have a consistent style, a consistent numbering convention. It's the law, folks. I mean, it's the law. He can come and arrest me if I don't do it. Now, I don't think he would do it, but it is the law. We need to understand it's the law. And when we start talking about where we're going to put definitions or we're going to have a preamble, it's the law, and we need to be careful. I agree with you. It needs to be looked at, but it
That
doesn't
being
mean
said, there's no reason that we
consistent.
can't
Yeah,
attach a cover letter
right.
saying this is what we want to
It
do.
needs to be consistent with other regulations, and maybe y'all just need to become the regulation committee and look at all of them and get them all consistent. I don't want to, moving along.
I have no galleys. Okay, at this point, I can entertain motions from the council, or from the committee, and options are to recommend that this, as written, is forwarded to the city council with a recommendation for approval, or as amended, as we were discussing here this morning,
I make a motion that we make the adjustments about the shrubbery that were discussed, and then send the updated document to the council.
About the formatting that you just talked about, how about your formatting?
And if possible, can't do that?
No, let me ask a question. I don't think we can deviate on the format of an ordinance.
Let me ask you a question. We want to change this thing, what Helen is forward presenting. Is this going to run into the next council? Or are we going to do it, we don't have time? So it's going to be left up to the new council.
It's a technical
Am I
question
correct?
here, Linda. If we make this amendment that we're talking about for shrubbery, do we go through this process again and then it goes to the council? Or can we go straight?
I mean, that's up to y'all. You can be done with it at this point with those amendments, and then it goes to council. Council will hold its own public hearing, and then they will have the choice to either vote on it then or push it to another meeting.
So,
What's legal?
If we do it now, it's got to be at least 30 days publication for the council, right?
At least 15,
Okay, at
To
least
45,
15 days. Then the council will vote on, or will not vote on it, but we'll have a public hearing.
right.
Then whatever they come up with.
And then they can either vote at that meeting or a subsequent meeting, depending on what they want to do.
So, in answer to your question, it conceivably could happen in December.
Right.
It could,
Yeah.
legally.
Yeah.
Legally, okay.
Only legally.
I would like for all of us to be here when we take this vote. All the members of this committee.
Well, let's
Well,
get
that'll
done
be
with this
April.
proposal.
But we can't have one, I realize that, but
Get Tommy back up.
We have a quorum.
If you have a quorum, you have to have a
no, that's what I'm saying. I would like for the whole committee to be here to vote on it.
I mean, there were.
We're not gonna have the whole-
That'll be April
Yeah.
before that happens, because we've got one member.
If it takes a if it takes a bunch of us new, the way I see it, I don't wanna be here. I have heard enough argument from this crowd, and this is what I heard at the forum the other day, at both forums, at the lodge and over here. There's too much division in this city to have a clean vote on anything. Everybody, there's one group over here that's for something, there's one group over here that argues about that group over there because they are for it, and I don't like it. I would like to see something happen with this thing, and it be the way the people want it. Not the way we want it, the way you want it. It's terrible to see all the argument going on in this room. It's division.
Debbie?
I believe Mr. Shebel Debbie Curtis, I believe Mr. Shebel, who had some very strong objections early, said, and please correct me, that you feel this ordinance, as we have discussed it, is more fair than the current ordinance and that you would support it.
But he also said there's certain parts of it that need to be straightened out. It's not 100% with everybody. That's the way I look at it. No, it needs to be that way.
Well,
It needs to
anything
be
ever be
simple.
100%.
Yeah, I think this is better because it makes it more and more and more objective. My problem with everything around here is the subjective aspect. And you can't handle that with an ordinance, but I think that structurally, you know, as I've said a couple of times, a couple of ways, different approaches to have people, citizens look at it, or elected or appointed committees or something, be the decision makers, because it's just, it will be more objective. And I think what you drafted is more objective, so what I did, I do I'd do again if I had to go through a subjective process. You know, you can't solve that with this, but you can solve it by creating a whole different structure, and maybe when it gets to the council, they can do that, if you don't want to deal with that, but.
Well, I don't think that's something we have the
Yeah.
authority to do.
I would just like to say that we are very fair in the process that we do. I mean, you didn't give us a chance because you didn't apply. But Bob and I, neither one, have an opinion on, we want you to have a view and don't want you to have a view. I mean, it's not like that. We try to
Well, I
be,
disagree.
and
That's not been my
can I finish for 1 second?
Sure.
Is we are the ones, Bob and I are the ones that ask for these additional guidelines. Give us something to base our decisions on. We don't want to do it subjectively. We want anybody to be able to pick up the ordinance, even if we have to help you understand it. We want you to know right up front, well, this is what I should expect. You know, so that this all was instigated, not by the mayor, not by anybody else. It was Bob and I saying, please give us something to base these decisions on. That's it.
Well, you know my problem.
Well, you and I need to talk, because I really don't know your problem, but this is not the
You
forum to
don't
do
know.
that.
Okay, I don't know.
All right,
My
behind
problem is you didn't enforce it.
So that seems to be
Excuse me.
the biggest problem.
I've just got to speak again if you don't mind.
But it doesn't want me to
Ben,
force it
I
when it's
disagree
illegal.
with you.
Exactly.
There's not divisiveness when people have different opinions, and we can come together, and we can talk about them, we can present them, and we can work on them. That's what this P&Z committee's been doing. And Linda, when you just said, even if we have to help you or show you, that's what I think we need to change.
Well, we do
will
now.
help you.
Oh, yeah, no, but my
And I know you
point,
will.
yeah, my point is, people come in
But that's
now,
That's.
and we
you know,
walk you through the
we're
process. That's not gonna
Working
change.
on words, we need, and then these words have helped us, I think, get together, and I hate the word divisiveness, when people have different opinions that you can come together and talk about. And my nephew, I just would agree with you to a point, and that is that you do have a voice. You had a voice here this morning. There are a lot of people that have come to these P&Z meetings over this 2 years that were not full-time residents, that did not have a voice, that influenced how this ordinance was being formulated.
You have a voice.
And if you
just
come
don't
to the
have
city
coverage.
council, you are allowed to voice. And when you voice that opinion, and I've seen it with people who do not have a vote for city council or mayor, have a voice that was influential with the council. And that's the way we want it. And I understand this, not being a member of the council currently, that there is an effort going on to put all the meetings, videos on the website, so that whether you're in Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, or South Georgia, you can at least see, and then you can still have a voice. You can write a letter. You can call City Hall. You can call the mayor. You can call the city councilors. That's what we want to encourage, that kind of thing going on. I hope so. That's why I'm running again. I don't know what else there is to say, but we need to, all of us need to recognize that we can disagree without being disagreeable, and the more so that you do that, the more you'll be heard. Sometimes it's the people that speak softly can carry a big stick too. I'm preaching. I'm going to turn my collar and I'm going to go sit down.
Where's the hook?
Last one.
Thank you.
Thanks, dear.
Well, well said.
Deborah Janice McAfee,
Does that mean I'm out of the
just
well?
a thought. I don't know if I'm out of order. No. But I think we need to encourage this, our commission here, our workshop here, to let it go to council, let it move forward. They've spent 2 years on it. And it no longer needs to be subjective, it needs to be objective. If it goes to a legal matter, it needs to be defined. They have defined it. Let's move it forward. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion on the table and a second to,
Mr. Chairman, would you repeat the motion?
I'll let the maker of the motion do that.
I'll try to. I'm also taking notes with the secretary today, so I don't have it, I can't quote it, but the video could, I guess. My motion is that with the suggested corrections regarding shrubbery be added to the document. And I was going to say, if we can reformat the order that would put it in a more sequential order, that I would recommend that, if we can do it. But mainly, we reword the shrubbery section and then send the document to the council for their approval or disapproval. So that's not exactly a quote, but it's the best I can do.
And Ben did second that. So, all in favor of the motion? Aye. Carries unanimously. I thank you all for your attendance and comments.
May I say something?
Yes.
I'm Myrna Warner of Scott Valley Way, and it's been a great meeting, and whoever has my pen, please return.
We adjourn.